Hello and welcome to Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. Tonight we'll be looking at an emergency crew rescuing a sex doll after mistaking it for a drowning woman. As the COVID pandemic wanes, sexually transmitted infections are likely to rise. An animal study suggesting that COVID can find a home in testicular tissue. And the Tokyo Olympics providing condoms for athletes, but asking them to take them home to use them.
All right, so we got some good ones.
Welcome back
for this week. Welcome to you, my brother.
Interesting news items, yes. Mm-hmm. Well, this is just a laugh that someone came upon what they thought was a woman's body and attempted to rescue it and found out that it was in fact a sex doll.
That's right. It was I think that it was kind of like that old Alfred Hitchcock movie, A Rear Window. Somebody was sitting in their window just looking out, and they saw in this river or stream what they thought was a woman drowning, and they called police, and there was this big rescue. I mean, it was a really huge effort, to bring lines down, and some of these rescue workers kind of risked their own lives.
This witness was filming a fishing video, and she said that she thought it was a dead body floating in the water, had washed up, but it was a blow-up doll.
That's right. But they didn't know it was a blow-up doll until all of the emergency personnel and the life-saving rescuers were called into action, and it wasn't until they got into the water that they realized. And then when they pulled it up, I saw a picture of them pulling up this doll, this rescue worker, on a line, hanging, down into this river, coming up with this sort of partially deflated sex doll.
This is very funny. Well, first of all, this is a YouTube influencer who was
taking the pictures.
272,000 subscribers, and she said someone else obviously phoned it in, prompting a Blues Brothers-esque army of emergency services to arrive. If you remember that movie, remember how many dozens.
That's right. For those of you who do remember or don't remember, imagine every car in the police force arsenal.
Ready to rescue what they thought was a person in peril. Indeed, accompanying photos show multiple fire and rescue brigades, police, and an ambulance working to dredge the body from the water in front of a crowd of onlookers. Oh, that must have been
quite the scene.
Hysterically.
Yeah, it really was. But and fortunately, there is a happy ending to this story. The doll was rescued, relatively unharmed. I don't know if it was reinflated.
Well, they don't know how it got in the water.
Right. They assume it was a garbage thing.
Perhaps it was someone upset with his or her partner.
That's right. Somebody broke up with their sex doll.
Their silicone soulmate. Mm-hmm. And in our next piece is something we've been talking about for a while.
Yeah.
It's will it, won't it, will there be? We talked about the no-show for the supposed post-COVID baby boom, and then wondering if there's just going to be a return to casual sex when people are relaxed and feel like they could leave their homes.
Yeah.
So this was a piece looking at, again, the idea that STI infections are likely to increase as the pandemic wanes.
Right. We're going to see some interesting statistical patterns in all of this, because 2019 was really the highest level of sexually transmitted infections ever reported. Then COVID hit. And, what we look at for 2020 and 2021, we're going to see probably almost close to zero levels of sexually transmitted infections, but that's not because there weren't any. It's because there were no resources put into testing. Most of the STI testing programs, most of the sexual health programs in health departments were pretty much shut down. All the funds redirected to COVID. So we really don't have statistics for 2021. And I think what we're going to see coming into 22 is a skyrocketing. Right? Now, I personally do believe that there is going to be an increase, because when you hear all the things we've been hearing the last couple of weeks, this hot vax summer, people are itching to get back out there. You know, people are using vaccines now as kind of their foreplay.
Pickup line.
Right? And I think we really are going to see a peak in sexually transmitted infections.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, the technology always, sex usually leads most technological advances, and some folks have been motivated by this situation to realize that condoms haven't really changed much in a long time, and so they're investigating condoms that can do more to prevent unintended pregnancy and STIs. There's a group called the Global Initiative for Multipurpose Prevention Technologies, are working to advance the development of at least 20 products, pills, rings, diaphragms, gels, injectables, and implants, with each product providing protection against, as I said, both pregnancy and STIs and HIV.
Right. But, big but, that is potential.
Sure.
That is horizon kind of stuff. There's no technology that's going to make you smart. There's no technology that's going to allow you to make good decisions for yourself. Yeah. So, one of the things that I think is worth mentioning, really worth repeating, a lot of the stuff we started talking about in the very beginning of this pandemic, about people being sexual during this pandemic, having sex while wearing a mask.
Right.
There was, I think this first came out of, I want to say Great Britain. The health service in
Canada.
Great Britain, or it was either Canada, Great Britain, possibly even the Netherlands. But there was an official health department recommendation that people kind of use glory holes and engage in more anonymous sexual practices. Wow. It's kind of funny that the emphasis during COVID became cover your mouth, right, as opposed to just your genitals. So let's keep that going. Right? This post-COVID stuff, even if you're vaccinated, again, because we don't know yet how much we can rely on that with what's going on, different variants, how long is this protection going to last? There's still a lot of very important questions that remain unanswered. So part of your hot vax summer, wear condoms, wear a mask, and have at it, right? And, I think we can, with these simple measures, help prevent an explosion of sexually transmitted infections. Right. Because no matter what the circumstances, right, it doesn't change the fact that these are still the most preventable things out there. And with just a minimum of effort, right, we can stop it.
Was it...
See Everett Koop.
That's right. You knew what I was going to ask.
Yep.
Right? All the way back in the mid-'80s, 84, 85, 86, somewhere around there. Former Surgeon General under Reagan, right?
Biggest disappointment to that administration.
Yeah, because he was, sane and
that's right.
Talked about harm reduction.
But kept his religion personal. That's what was the big thing.
Dr. Koop said that we could get rid of HIV and all STDs tomorrow. Right. If everybody in the world just decided at the same time, starting tomorrow, we're not going to give or get. Right.
And that's really the key. And part of that is stop worrying about and obsessing with who is out there with what. Right. And think of one thing and one thing only. What do I need to do to protect myself? And if we all did that, then there's nothing to give or get.
Right.
Right? And yet, it is that simple.
But the chances of us all doing that, everyone in the world at the same time, probably not.
Right. Well, we've done such a good job with mask wearing, so...
Yeah. Where's your T-shirt?
Yeah.
This is, well, again, one of those goofy studies, that come up when we search for sex in the news items, but something we've been talking about for a while, right? Another animal study, this one from where? Health Day News. Doesn't say where this study was done, but the lab had been studying Zika virus. University of Texas.
Texas.
That's right. And like I think was mentioned in a previous piece a couple of weeks ago, they found that COVID can live in testicular tissue. So COVID has been isolated in hamster balls.
That's right.
And what that means for us is just another one of those notes for further study to find out the long-term impacts, the potential long-term impacts, and if COVID finding a long-term home in guys' testes, obviously there would be problems there.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about this in the past when they first started looking at evidence of urological harboring presence of COVID, and now in these animal models. And by the way, hamster balls are very, very similar to human balls. That's why they use hamsters in these studies, and it really does show that this could be an active reservoir. Just like we talk about lymph glands and some other areas in the body that are reservoirs for HIV, this could be a reservoir for COVID. And it is something that we do have to pay attention to, right? Because we may not be out of it when we think we're out of it. There may be other chapters that are yet to be written. Right? So stay tuned.
Okay. And in our last piece, this is a laugh. The Tokyo Olympic Committee will be providing condoms to the international athletes who will be assembling there starting today for this year's Olympic Games.
As is customary.
Right. Yeah.
Right? People don't realize that.
The home country has traditionally provided condoms to athletes visiting. But they have asked, in very Japanese fashion, I think, for the athletes to please take the condoms home to your home country and use them there.
Right. So we want you to have all these condoms, but you're not allowed to use them. In fact, that is kind of a law that they're giving them to the athletes living in that Olympic village and telling them they're not allowed to use them in the Olympic village. But I love that message. Please take them home.
Yep. 160,000 condoms are being made available for the athletes.
Right. Not to be used, just available. All right. So, let's see how that goes as well.
Yes, this goes back to 1988, so the Seoul Games, when the home country was asked to provide. Usually, they say it's pretty much an open secret that lodging a huge number of young, physically fit individuals in close proximity for 2 weeks usually results in plentiful copulation. However, many are already questioning whether it's safe to be holding the Olympics in the first place during a pandemic. And encouraging athletes to get naked seems like an unnecessary additional risk. Encouraging them to get naked.
Yeah, right.
The Olympics used to be, right? The athletes used to
in ancient Greek times, they were all naked. Absolutely. It was a naked competition, naked wrestling, naked javelin throwing.
I can't imagine who said, I can throw an extra 6 feet if I could just get these annoying shorts off.
As we like to wrap up this section of Sex in the News, one of our favorite pieces. It's something that we call Poetic Justice, where we do like to give a shout out to people call out to people who engage in any of the many different types of sexual hypocrisies, double standards, and sometimes just bad behavior. Right? And
So
who do
here
we have this week?
We have the arrest of 2 people in Enid, Oklahoma. And we want to call particular attention to the mom in this case, right? This
Yes.
involved Enid detectives arresting a sex offender for having sex with an underage girl.
Right. 13 years old.
Right. And after interviewing all involved, the sex offender admitted to the relationship, admitted to failing to register as an offender as he was required to do by law, admitted to all of the nude images he had of this underage girl. But it also came to light that her mom, a 47-year-old woman, unnamed to protect the girl's identity, knew about the relationship.
Was very aware of it.
And apparently was, I don't know, turning out her daughter. Was he paying her money for the bills, or for whatever reason?
It's.
But happily, she was charged as well.
Yes. Yeah. Now, part of, and again, I still have a hard time finding a place for this to sit on sort of level ground in my head. That part of what this guy was saying, and he was having this relationship with this 13-year-old girl for over a year, but I don't know that I've ever heard a line like this before. This guy, this sex offender, this basically pedophile, right, who was having sex with this 13-year-old, but he said he wanted to break it off, but he couldn't because he wasn't sure how she would take it.
He was worried about her reaction.
Yeah, he was worried how she would react
relationship.
to ending the relationship. So he kept on having sex with a 13-year-old until he began having sex with a 14-year-old. Right? Because he didn't know how she would react if he stopped having sex with her as a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. But again, our call out here is to the mom. Right? You are the mother of a 13-year-old girl that is basically being abused, raped, and no matter how you talk it or describe it, talk about it, that's what this is, and she's okay with that. Right? So for being okay and allowing your 13-year-old daughter to continue to be subject to the sexual whims of an adult sex offender, this 47-year-old mom in Enid, Oklahoma gets this week's
Piece of shit.
Poetic Justice. And with that, we give you our customary salute. Mom?
That'll do it for this week's Sex in the News. See you next Sunday. We are the Siegel Brothers.